I'd like to begin tonight by asking you a very important question, but it's one that we don't ask ourselves very often. Is God your roommate, or is God your spouse? I ask this question a lot in the parish where I serve, especially on a married couples retreat, when we talk about the spiritual dimension of marriage. And where the question came from is from a retreat master that I had last January. I was meeting with the retreat director about once a day, and everything was moving along smoothly. And then all of a sudden one day he said to me, "Is God your roommate or is God your spouse?" And I looked at him, and it caught me off guard so much that I answered with a flip answer and said, "Well, could he just be a neighbor?" And I said to him, even though that was a flip answer, there are days in my life when God is like a neighbor. I see him in the morning, I wave at him when I pick up the paper, I say hello, and I go back in the house. I might see him 2 or 3 days later. Many people have that relationship to God, who's a neighbor. When the retreat master asked me that question, he said, "You know, when I was in college, I had a roommate." And he said, the roommate for me was just, he was a nice guy. We got along fine. I'd see him in the morning and say, "Hope you have a good day." He'd go his way. I'd go my way. We'd never think of each other all day. I'd see him in the evening after I saw him. "How was your day?" "Okay." And if he'd have probably said terrible, I'd have said okay, because I wasn't listening, and I'd have gone on. But he said it can't be that way with a spouse. A spouse, a husband or wife, is someone that we really care about. And in the morning, when we wish them a good day, it's a deeper kind of wish. When they come in the evening and we say to them, "How are you doing?" we honestly care how they're doing. Excuse me. And at that time, we really want to come home to this person. And you can say, well, what has this got to do with living with uncertainty in our life? It really has everything. It's a very important question, because when we live with uncertainty, it means we're not in control. There are just lots of things that we don't know what's coming, we don't know where it's going. And because of that, and we don't have control, the natural reaction is fear, worry, anxiety. And there's so much uncertainty in all of our lives. Many of you I do know tonight, many of you I do not. But think of the uncertain kinds of things that we all share. What will the biopsy show? Is it cancer? And we might have to live with that for weeks. I'm 56 years old, and they've laid off 14 people at work. Am I going to lose my job next? How am I going to feed the kids? If my husband takes that position are we going to have to move? Do we have to uproot everything in our life and start over halfway across the country, away from family, away from friends? Is the breast cancer going to come back? If Dad dies, who's been taking care of Mom, who's going to take care of her? I always told her I wouldn't put her in a nursing home, but the health she's in now, I can't do it. Am I going to have to put her in a nursing home? All of these kinds of questions are human questions. Every one of us in this room has dealt with something like that. That's why that initial question is so important. If there's that much uncertainty in the world, how do we cope? How do we find peace? The way we find peace is allowing God to be what He has always dreamed He could be for us. When you read the Scriptures, all through the Scriptures, God says things like, I will marry you the way a young man marries a maiden. And you say, you're kidding. My God will marry me? Yes. If we look at the whole mystery of the incarnation, what is Jesus saying when He becomes one with us? What is He saying about the relationship that God wants with all of His people? The incarnation is about God's wedding feast to all of His people and to each one of us individually. And we can say, are you sure that's what He means? Yes, even at the wedding feast at Cana. If you read the wedding feast at Cana story, that very first miracle of Jesus in John's Gospel, why is it first? It's because it's the most important sign of what God is trying to do with each one of us. He wants to marry us. In fact, if you read the story closely, you know it's not meant to be a historical story. Yes, maybe there was a wedding at Cana, and maybe Mary went and Jesus went and the disciples went. But when they tell the story, Jesus makes 180 gallons of wine after they've been drinking all night and they've run out of wine. Does that sound like Jesus? That would have been enough for the little village of Cana to drink for the next 10 years. We're not talking about a historical thing. Who is the bridegroom in that story? The bridegroom is God. The bridegroom is God. And people bring the new wine to the bridegroom and say, the old wine of the past was not as good, but you have served the good wine later. We didn't know through all those years that your real dream was to marry all of us and to marry each of us. What does that dream mean? Our deacon tonight, Deacon Dale, and his wife will be married 50 years next year. I should sit down right now and let him tell you. But he says, no, don't do that to me now. But look at all of you who have been married, and whether you're in a good marriage at the moment, or whether you've been blessed with a good marriage and lost your spouse, or whether it's those of us who have never been married but have watched you, we know what you mean to each other. You are a rock to each other. You are a strength to each other. You are a comfort to each other. You are the one who is a presence in your spouse's life that is a presence even when they're not there. When you go to work, you know that presence of your spouse who's at home. Your spouse is someone to come home to. The spouse is the rock. The spouse is the one who listens. The spouse is the one who understands. And most of all, the spouse is the one that you trust the most. You know, when we were little kids, as little kids, we trusted our parents, but we trusted them in a blind way. You know, our dad could save us from anything, but he really couldn't. But we thought he could. Our mom could protect us from anybody, but maybe she couldn't from that bully at school. But as a little kid, we trust our parents. As a teenager or a young adult, we'll trust our friends. But the real act of trust, the deepest act of trust, is trusting your spouse, that special friend, that one who will always be there. Can they take all the uncertainty away? No, but they share it. They're there. They hold you when you're anxious. They comfort you when you're worried. They are always there. So again, whether you've been blessed with a good marriage or whether you've never been married before, all of us who watch the best of marriages know what God is for us and what He does for us. Can a spouse protect us from everything that can harm us? No. And we know that even from the marriage vows. When you came forward in the church to repeat the marriage vows and proclaim them to each other, you said, we don't know if it's going to be better or worse. We don't know if it's going to be richer or poorer. It's always poorer. We never know if it's going to be sickness or health. All we know is, I will be there. I will be there. You will not be alone. I will help you through whatever is coming. I will be your strength. I will be your comfort. I will be your rock. I will be God for you. That's the beauty of what we celebrate. So tonight, as we reflect on all those uncertain things, will the cancer come back? Will I lose my job? Will my kids ever come back to church? I sent them to Catholic school and Catholic high school. Will they ever come back to church? Will they share my Catholic faith? All those things in life that we don't control. God says, I will be there. I will be your spouse. I will be that rock. I will be that comfort. You won't face it alone. For all of us, what I ask you tonight, none of us can take away the uncertainty. We know that. None of us can really take away the worry. We're going to worry whether people tell us to or not. We're going to be anxious whether people tell us to or not. It's a natural reaction. But what we know is this: God will always be there. God will always give us the strength to deal with things. I started with one question tonight. Is God your roommate that you just say hello to? Or have you allowed him to be a spouse? I ask you tonight, in your prayer in the coming weeks, think of your marriage, or think of one of the most beautiful marriages that you know. Perhaps your parents, perhaps a friend, perhaps so many marriages that I have seen in the parish in which I serve. When you see those, when you know what that marriage means to those two people, ask God to help you to form that relationship with Him. Let Him be your God. So we started with one question: is He your roommate or your spouse? I want to end with three questions. Do we know what the future is going to bring? No. Do we know that God will always be there? Yes. Do we know that no matter what comes in uncertain times or in our uncertainties in life, will we be okay? Yes, because we are not alone.